I want to talk about something that's affecting millions of Canadians right now: the skyrocketing rents and the government's role in this housing crisis. More specifically, how a federal program designed to build affordable rental housing may actually be making the problem worse. You've probably heard about the government's big push to build more apartments across Canada, and that sounds like a good thing, right? More homes should mean more supply, which should help lower rents or at least keep them stable. But the reality is far more complicated, and frankly, it's frustrating. Let me explain. The federal government created the Apartment Construction Loan Program, or ACLP for short. The goal was to increase rental housing by giving developers billions of dollars in low-interest loans. The idea was simple: encourage builders to construct more apartments, especially in cities where rental demand is high, so more people can find a place to live. Sounds like a win-win. The government helps developers build, renters get more options, and prices should stay reasonable because of increased supply. But here's the problem. The government never told developers how much they should charge for rent in these new apartments. There were no rent caps, no affordability requirements tied to these loans. Developers were free to set rents however they wanted. Let me give you a real-world example. Thousands of new apartments were built on the outskirts of Calgary, funded in part by the ACLP. But instead of pricing these units affordably for the local market, many developers set rents at the highest levels seen in Canada. For example, a two-bedroom apartment in Toronto, one of the most expensive cities, rents for about $2,600 a month. Now imagine trying to rent a similar two-bedroom apartment in a small town in Alberta, where the average rent is closer to $950 a month, but the developer charges $2,600. What do you think happened? After an entire year, only 2 out of 100 of these apartments were rented. That's a 2% occupancy rate. The rest sat empty. Why? Because people simply can't afford those prices. The local economy and average incomes don't support such high rents. So these apartments, built with government-subsidized loans, are sitting vacant while people in the community struggle to find affordable housing. But the story doesn't end there. Because these new apartments were priced so high, many people who were already renting at $950 a month suddenly found their landlords raising rents to $1,200. Why? Because the landlords knew tenants had fewer options. The new apartments weren't a real alternative since they were unaffordable, so landlords felt empowered to increase rents, pushing many renters beyond their means. The result? Many renters were forced to move back in with parents or relatives, or worse, ended up homeless. Families were displaced and communities were destabilized. All because the government's well-meaning loan program failed to include basic protections for renters. So, who's responsible? This crisis didn't happen by accident. The government created the ACLP to solve a problem, but by not setting clear rules on rent pricing, they handed developers a blank check to charge whatever the market would bear, even if that meant pricing out entire communities. Developers, of course, are businesses. Their goal is to maximize profits. Without rent controls or affordability requirements, it's no surprise they set rents at the highest possible level, especially in areas where demand is strong or where there's little competition. But the government also shares responsibility. When public money is involved, there must be accountability. Taxpayer-funded loans shouldn't be used to fuel unaffordable housing that hurts the very people the program was supposed to help. This situation reveals why rent controls and affordability requirements matter. Rent controls limit how much landlords can increase rents each year, protecting tenants from sudden unaffordable hikes. Some provinces have rent control laws, but many only apply to existing tenants. Landlords can raise rents to market rates between tenants. This loophole means rents can skyrocket when new tenants move in, especially in tight markets. Without rent controls tied to government funding, developers have no incentive to keep rents affordable. So what's the solution? How do we fix this mess? Here's what I believe must happen, and soon. First, the government must require developers who receive ACLP loans to set rents that reflect the local market's affordability. If the average rent in a town is $950, new apartments built with government funds should be priced similarly, not $2,600. This means making rent caps a condition of receiving public money. No exceptions. This will ensure new supply actually helps renters instead of sitting empty or driving up prices elsewhere. Second, if developers refuse to lower rents to affordable levels, they should be required to pay back the loan money, plus interest, within a strict deadline, say 2 months. This creates a real incentive to comply and discourages profiteering at the expense of communities. Third, if developers still don't comply, the government should have the authority to take over these properties and hand them over to local non-profit housing organizations. These non-profits understand their communities and can set rents that people can actually afford. Non-profits also reinvest any surplus back into maintaining and improving housing rather than maximizing profits. This approach would turn a failed market experiment into a sustainable solution that benefits everyone. Non-profit housing providers have long been a critical part of Canada's affordable housing landscape. They focus on serving vulnerable populations, seniors, families, newcomers, people with disabilities, and keep rents affordable because profit isn't their goal. Some non-profits even run social enterprises to generate revenue that supports their housing programs. Expanding non-profit housing and giving them more control over government-funded properties could be a game changer. Let's not forget the human cost behind these numbers. When rents rise beyond what people can afford, it forces impossible choices. People double up in crowded homes. Young adults stay with their parents longer. Families get pushed into homelessness. Mental health suffers. Communities break down. This isn't just about economics. It's about dignity and stability. You might be thinking, okay, this sounds complicated, but why should I care? Here's why. Housing affordability affects all of us. When rents go up, it drives inflation and increases the cost of living for everyone. It impacts workers, students, seniors, people you know and care about. If we don't fix this, the crisis will only deepen. More empty apartments will sit unused while people sleep on the streets. More families will be priced out of their communities, and billions in government loans will have been wasted. So what can you do? Demand that the government impose rent caps on all properties built with public funds like the ACLP. Push for strict deadlines and penalties for developers who refuse to comply. Support non-profit housing organizations that provide affordable, community-focused solutions. Share this video with your friends, family, and local representatives. The more people know about this issue, the more pressure we can put on policymakers to act. In upcoming videos, I'll dive into how rent controls work in different provinces and how non-profit housing models can reshape Canada's rental market for the better. We'll also explore stories of communities and organizations making a real difference. At the end of the day, housing is a basic human need, not just a commodity to be exploited for profit. The government's role should be to protect renters and ensure public money is used to build homes people can afford. The ACLP had good intentions, but without safeguards, it's contributed to the housing crisis instead of solving it. It's time for real accountability and real solutions. If you're tired of hearing about the housing crisis but seeing no action, this is your moment to get involved. Like, comment, and subscribe too for more insights on how money, policy, and everyday life intersect. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll explore how rent controls and non-profit housing models can reshape Canada's rental market for the better. Until then, take care and keep making smart money decisions.